So this is episode 16 with Dr. Timothy Monreal. We're going to call him Tim for today, but pretty excited here. Met this gentleman a couple of times just in passing on Zooms, and then a couple of cool little conversations, or little, I don't know if we could call them conversations, little tweets and tweet responses. And so just a little bit on his background. Graduated with his PhD from the University of, is it South Carolina?
It is South Carolina, which is.
All right. I'm looking for my page. I was like, oh, I had a note here and I'm missing it. But going through your bio and looking through everything, it's pretty cool, man. I like. So I started going down your Twitter feed, doing a little bit of studying, and I love that you're using hacked education, Audrey Waters. That's cool, man. That's cool. And then I was just kind of looking at like some of your interests. Most of my time was in middle school, so I really like your background in it. And then there was an article I just came across right now that CSUB TED tweeted out, and it was on teaching. Let me look it up real quick one more time. It had to do with the Aztecs, but so just to start out first, man, just give us a little bit of information on yourself, your background, teaching, kind of let the people know who Tim is.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for allowing me to come in and to kind of cut it up with you. I'm excited. Who I am. So I think first and foremost, I'm a teacher. I fell in love with teaching. And like so many people, I stumbled into it, after college. It was like, hey, why don't you become a teacher for a couple of years? And unfortunately, I was part of some of those programs that have those mindsets, they're like, do this to build your resume and be, be the next thought leader in education. So right after college, I went to downtown Los Angeles and taught there. And I quickly realized that I was learning much more from the communities that were welcoming me in, right, than me going in there and with that savior mentality. And so that really kind of set me up for how I started to approach education and both like what we can do with education, but also sometimes the limits of education, right, and how we really need to think critically about why certain things are the way they are, right? Both in the education world and the world more generally. So I taught in the classroom it was about 7 or 8 years, and then I decided to go the PhD route, and I went to the University of South Carolina. I thought I was going to look at culturally relevant and sustaining pedagogies, but then I wandered into at least shocking to me, that there were Latinx communities in the South, and growing Latinx communities in the South, and nobody was looking at their lives, their assets. And so I stumbled into that, and super fortunate that I'm able to come back to Bakersfield to be an assistant professor. I grew up in Madera, and if you would have told me that I would get a chance to work with communities here, I would have told you that you were crazy. But
you would come back to the heat.
That's it, right? But I'm just so humbled and fortunate to be here and to start, hopefully building community out here and learning from a bunch of great educators.
Hey, when you went to downtown LA, where were you at, or what schools did you work at? What neighborhoods?
Yeah. So Adams in Vermont, which Little Salvi is what is how they referred to themselves, right by USC. And it was actually a small Catholic school, St. Agnes School, and they just blew me away with how little I knew about life and education, and how much I had to learn. So I loved my time there.
Hey, so was it all Salvadoreños or Central Americans, or what?
No, it was a good. So here was a good story. I'll tell you a really quick story about like me learning the really kind of cultural fabric of that community.
Yeah.
So I think it was it 2010 maybe, when it was the World Cup, and I think Mexico was playing South Africa in like the first game.
Yeah.
And I got all of these kids that are passionately rooting for South Africa, right? Like, just like, you would have thought they were like born in South Africa, right? And I'm like, what the hell's going on here? And then you got another like half of kids that are just freaking pissed off, right? Like just, and it was because, right, like it was the Salvadorian kids and the Mexican kids, and so it was a great mix. There was actually quite a few Vietnamese students as well. It was, you know, it was a really neat part of Los Angeles.
Hey, you know what's crazy, man, is because I looked up where you're talking about, and at that time, I was doing long-term subbing, and I was at a little charter school off of Western and West Martin Luther King Boulevard. It was a charter school that was taken up from an old Catholic church, and when I went, because I'm half Mexican, half Salvadoreño, and so like the Mexican side of me, when Mexico won, or no, it was a game that they lost, and I was like, man, did you guys see the game? And then like they start laughing and talking trash and cussing, and I was like, whoa, like what happened? And then I realized like, oh, so I bust out the Salvadoreño accent. I'm like, fíjate vos, oh no. So I know what you're talking about, but that's the cool part of LA. There's like little pockets of everything.
Yeah, exactly. And I was fresh, you know, and unfortunately, I think we still train teachers with this mentality that you're going to go in, right, and you're going to be the change, you know, and I think that that's one of the things that I've come to really, really advocate for, is that, you know, that's not the right attitude to have.
Yeah, no, that's cool, man. That's cool. Hey, I want to touch on the article that the CSUB article that I saw that they put out. And I'm trying to bring it right back up here. I swear I had it.
All right, good. Let me also pull it up because I wrote it a couple years ago. So
I'll put it in the link for you. Hey, I'm gonna put it in the link for you on the bottom.
Awesome.
Of the chat.
Awesome.
And so yeah, no, I could relate to everything that you're talking about. It was More Than Human Sacrifice, teaching about the Aztecs and the new Latino South. Mm-hmm. And then everything that you're saying, it's crazy, and it's crazy because you literally only learn, like they build pyramids, human sacrifice, you know, and then that's like the history, you know. I don't know, so give me some thoughts on that, or just kind of expand on what you're just expand your thoughts on that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, that's the history I learned, right? Was like that Mel Gibson image, right, of like the tearing of the heart out, and I don't know, it never really clicked to me until I moved to South Carolina. And for lack of better words, there was just a bunch of like white Southerners that like were like, oh, the Aztecs, like and I was like thinking about in my head, like, what are their images of Latinx people, right? And what are the images like of our own histories? And at that time, I was doing a lot more just study and reading of indigenous philosophies and knowledges, and trying to really just kind of decolonialize my own thinking, you know. And I started just stumbling on to some just marvelous texts, in terms of like, you know, the Aztecs. Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to say that there were not, you know, sacrifices, or there were not, right, a whole bunch of, and that history is disputed, right? But you know, they were philosophers, right? Like Floricanto, like all of these things that was an intricate part of their lives, the way they saw the world. Yeah. Like none of that gets taught, but you know, we teach about the Greeks and the Romans as philosophers, right? And so I was just really, you know, trying to bring in this whole idea of really like Nezahualcóyotl and all of these other individuals that were artists and poets, and so that's what this right?
The warrior prince.
Exactly. And there's some great, I don't have it with me, but there's some really cool children's books too that like have his poetry and in Spanish and English, and just really, you know, things for us to really challenge those narratives that, you know, that was their whole, you know, culture.
Yeah. You know what? One of the things that I recently seen it, and I looked it up, but I just found like a news article, an older one. But it's funny. It talks about how in Europe in the 1800s they would make candles out of like human fat. They would drink blood. They would eat like remedies out of crushed skull powder. Making medicines in the times of King Charles that like would be mixed with like human skull. But it would be as if we boiled down European history to the bubonic plague, Gothic cathedrals, and medicines made of humans. Like,
yeah, exactly, right? And like, I mean, we can go here if you want, but like, even just thinking now, like, I was raised Catholic, like, I don't know, like, so, and this whole idea that, Jesus died for us, or that he sacrificed for our sins, like, that's
the communion.
Yeah, isn't that the same? I mean, not the same, but like,
supposed to be.
Like, aren't there very kind of analogous ways of thinking about the world in that sense? And one is exalted and one is seen as, quote unquote, savage. Yeah. So, I thought it was just important for me, especially in a context of South Carolina, but, parts of Bakersfield and Kern County are the same when, we only have these deficit views of students of color to really kind of flip those histories around.
Yeah, no, that's cool, man. That's cool. Yeah, especially with the kids, give them some pride in something. Especially, I mean, oh man, do I really got to go there? But I mean, when you get rapists and criminals, it's like, no, that's not it, guys. That's not it.
I know. I mean, and I hate to keep bringing it back to South Carolina because, like, I grew up in the Central Valley, and I know that some of these things happen. They do happen here too, right? But like, that was people's whole context of, like, my family, of your family, right? Was that. Mm-hmm. And if as educators we're not challenging that, then I don't know what we're doing, Yeah. So.
Like, one of them I know, I mean, as you're here longer, you'll meet, like, you're going to meet a ton of people, but there's one, her name's Jennifer Scott, and she always does she's in the Bakersfield City School District, but she always intentionally tries to teach Mesoamerican history first, so she'll do things on the Mayans. I've seen her collaborate with people from outside of the country with her middle school class, and so she intentionally, like, hey, this is you should learn your culture, your history, because especially in some of the schools that we have, it is majority. It's not the same like in South Central, where you can go like Salvadorian, Guatemalan, like here it's a lot of Mexicans, and then it depends too where. Like, I've noticed that in some areas, like, it won't be Mexican, bro, it'll be Michoacanos, like.
yeah, exactly. Amen. Yeah, exactly.
So and I get it, I get it, like the patterns, the migration, all that, like, I get it, but yeah, no, it's cool, man. Hey, when you talked about like decolonizing your mind, like what did you read, or what did you like, what path did you go down? Because I think that's something that everybody that they should be doing at some point, right? What would you recommend, authors or books? Or
oh my good. Well, I mean, let's just like really quickly, just kind of like for folks that may not even like know what that term, right? You know what I mean? Like, when we think about colonization and even like decolonization of the mind, just kind of coming from this idea that, we live in like a settler colonial society, right? That the whole United States and for the most part, like the Western world's idea of like, values and accumulation is built on, exploitation of indigenous land, right? Of even indigenous ideas, and just how baked into, like how normalized that is, right? Things that we don't even think about. And I'm trying to think of some examples off the top of my head, but just this idea of challenging those things that we take as common sense, that are kind of reared in the exploitation of peoples. So in terms of how I came to it, I took a class as a graduate student. It was called Participatory Action Research.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and this whole idea of like doing research on folks, right? Yeah. So like, it was kind of similar to my classroom experiences. Like, right, when I first started teaching, I was like, I'm going to go in and be a teacher, like, on these people in the names of liberating them, for lack of a better word, right? Yeah. Well, as researchers, we often do the same thing. Like, oh, I'm going to research this population because I care about them, right? Yeah. But are you really doing that, or are you materially benefiting from their knowledge, from their experiences, from their struggles? And so there's a really neat book by Linda Smith, and she's Maori, I believe is how you say it, but indigenous from New Zealand. And she wrote a book called what's the decolonizing methodologies. And that was kind of one of the first things that I really started to think about. But then, in terms of bringing that to education, there's a number of fantastic folks, and also thinking too about how anti-Blackness. I'm thinking of Bettina Love as somebody who really thinks about how anti-Blackness and colonization work hand in hand. And so I think just things like that really got me thinking about just how weird in my own thought patterns, these ideas were.
That's when you're talking about research, how we're doing it, that's one of them. That for me is kind of the scary one, that fishbowl mentality, where you're gonna look at the fishies, jot your notes, and then we'll see you later. And when if that's how you're treating it, who benefits? Literally nobody benefited from that.
We did. We
by ourselves.
Yeah.
And even then, did we really benefit? Did we, you know what I mean? We got the title, or we got the citation, but yeah.
And I'm not saying I'm not perfect at this, and but by any means I'm learning. But it's just that those idea of always questioning kind of what you think is okay, you know, is something that I try and do.
Oh, that's cool, man. That's cool. So tell me, well, all right. So this is where our conversation started, and it was on. Let's hop all the way back to that one, right?
Just all right, yeah, go for it.
We'll hop into that one. It's we were talking about it was just a Twitter thread. I can't remember all of it, but then we were talking about professionalism and co-opting professionalism, neoliberalism, and online learning. I don't know. Do you want to go first? Just your thoughts, or what you were thinking when you saw it? I'll tell you. So this is
go first. Yeah, no, I want to hear from you first.
So this is my background. My background is I accidentally picked up a Noam Chomsky book one year, and then I just took off on a Chomsky 3, 4, 5 year. That's all I like to read, and then listen on YouTube, speeches and just different. So that was my introduction there to neoliberalism, and or the idea of neoliberalism, and I remember when I saw it, and I was thinking neoliberalism, it reminded me in one of his books, or it might have been one of his talks. It was called something like "Old Wine, New Skins." And then he goes back and he says that it's colonialism, and that these are just power structures that go all the way back. And so it was interesting because when you were talking about the professionalism aspect, it was to me almost when I was thinking about it, I thought of the old school Spanish pleasantries where you're like, no señor, oh no, adiós señor, a usted, no señor, a usted. It's oh señor, pero usted, and So when I was thinking neoliberalism, co-opting professionalism, I was thinking that a lot of what we do is an updated, no, sir, yes, sir, no.
Yeah. So I'm gonna do this. So this is the one thing I prepared for, right? But so my dissertation research, I looked at Latinx teachers in South Carolina. So just how they came to know themselves, how they came to, their experiences, their opportunities, their challenges in a context that is not very used to, having Latinx teachers. So anyways, this one teacher who, she was born in Los Angeles, but she moved to the South 20 years ago, and she identifies as Afro-Latina. And we were talking, and she said this, and she said, specifically in my experience in education, where tone is a really big thing, because we're very much like a customer service kind of industry. And so we're the customer's always right. And because we are trained to be polite to people all the time, even to rude parents, when we ourselves don't speak like that to each other, in that superficial voice. People can get offended, but when I've seen it, when white women talk that way, in meetings, it's not that big of a deal. But when women of color do it, it's this whole different ballgame. And there's a lot of tone policing when it comes to that. So, I'm just very mindful of being super professional when I'm at work.
Yeah.
Right. And so
the status quo, right? It's like a certain.
Yeah, it's just this, what I was concerned about. I don't know what I was tweeting about that day. I'm always probably subtweeting some BS that I hear from somebody, but it's just this idea that how these discourses of professionalism can be a way of controlling our labor, right? And then also how that gets raced, right? So in that particular example, right, you had to act a professional, you had to be a certain way, you had to do a certain thing, and how, right, white women could do things differently as a professional than a female teacher of color. So, and how that fits into neoliberalism, we can talk about that more, but just, how these are kind of like the innoxious ways that we perpetuate things that we say we don't believe in.
Yeah. No, and it goes all the way down into the same thing that we see in schools, right? Where it's studies showing that African American kids getting suspended for the same things that a white student would have done, or suspension rates being tied, to literally just to racial, and that's the same thing, right? It's just trickling all the way down. There's a certain.
Yeah, but what's even maybe crazier, right? Like when we tell students to be respectful, right? Like you were saying earlier, right? Our intentions are good, right? Like we want kids to operate a certain way in society. We want kids to have respect. Like, respect though is a huge point in our cultures. But at the same time, what are we really telling kids, especially brown and black kids, when we're telling them to be respectful?
Yeah.
Right? Are we telling them to be quiet, to be obedient, to do exactly as we tell them to do?
Yeah.
Right. And so those are some of the things, that I'm always thinking about.
One of the other ones, and I don't know, people take it differently, but especially like the last 4 or 5 years, and then when I finally was gonna knock out my doctorate, I felt like I could talk however I wanted to talk. And so people would say, oh, we got to teach them how to code switch. I was like, dude, I'm about to knock out that doctorate and I'm not switching any codes around here.
Amen.
They could be who they want to be, and some people didn't like that, but it was like, hey, I don't know what to say. Like I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah. And that's where the professionalism comes in, right? Like at this moment in time, right? I'm not in the classroom right now, I'm just at CSUB, but when we're telling teachers, oh, you need to be apolitical, or you need to act like everything's okay because that's the professional thing to do. Like, things aren't all right now, yeah. Right? We have to address these things. And if you're telling me that to be a professional means I have to act a certain way, like you're saying, right? Like I have to speak English properly or do whatever.
Yeah.
Like, nah, like that's why we're in some of these messes.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and honestly, like for me, it's been, I don't know, for me, it's hard. I do feel like I have to hold back a lot. I do hold back a lot, and I just, like, I'm really mindful, especially like over the last year, just because, I don't know, like I don't want to say I have like a fear, but I do, like, I have like a, like just speaking up sometimes, I actually like feel that, and I'm like, man, this is different because I've never felt that way, but you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean that's like some of my own research interest is I've moved a little bit more away from, like pedagogies and even curriculum, like even that article, but just like why and how do teachers come to feel this way, right? Yeah. Like because often that, at least in my own experience, there's no one telling me that I can't do certain things. Yeah. Right? Like I've very rarely ever had an administrator say like, you can't talk about this, or like you have to teach this way. But we think that these are things that we have to do, right? Like, so exact silence, right? Yeah. So why is that the way that it is?
Yeah. So that's one of the tougher ones for me personally, because so when I I started here in the Central Valley. Then I lived in LA. In LA, I bounced around and to different charter schools doing like long-term subbing. But I thought when I went to LA, I was gonna see like a lot of I don't know, man, like a lot of like stand and deliver, like a lot of raza, you know. And when I went, I was like, oh wow, like there's not many brown teachers here either, you know. And then when I stepped back, I was like, wow, there isn't a lot of brown teachers or black teachers. And then when I started looking at the history of everything, it was you know what I mean? It's eye opening. It's eye opening.
Exactly. I mean, we got a lot of work to do, you know, and people like you're saying, you know, like when I was in the South, people are like, oh, well, you know, you're from California. Everything is so great there. And it's like, I never even learned about Cesar Chavez growing up, you know, and I grew up in the Central Valley, right? Dolores Huerta. I mean, you know, like these are things like you're saying. I don't even remember the first time that I had, you know, a Latinx or a Chicano or a Chicanx teacher. You know, so these are things that that I'm very passionate about. You know, for the future of our valley. And oftentimes people are just like, oh, it's okay because you all are in California or Los Angeles, but now we got work to do out here too.
I think I've been listening to podcasts, and one of them, this one's funny. It's the Mike Tyson podcast, man. He interviews Van Jones. I think it's Van Jones from CNN. And so Van Jones, he was Van Jones, he says he was hardcore, like anarchist, communist, like all through his 30s. Then he started doing like a nonprofit stuff. And then he did some initiatives that got him into the White House. Like he says, it's so random how it all happened. But one of the things he points out, and I'm sure I'm wrong on the numbers, but he says something like, in the same span that we built like 10, 15 prisons, we made 0 higher education universities like to match it. And it's like, dude, and this is California.
Yeah,
this is California.
Exactly. And you know what that comes back to? Neoliberalism oftentimes, right? Like we don't invest in public institutions. You know, even in California, just something as simple as, I have 2 girls, right? One who's 4 and one who's 2. And, we make a little bit too much money to like have the child get the free preschool or whatever it is, right? The 3-year-old preschool, which is fine. Like, those opportunities should go to other folks. But at the same time, when you think about it, it's like, well, then what do? Oh, well, we have the means to then send our child to a place that we can pay for.
Yeah.
Well, who's going to that place? Well, it's a bunch of people that have means to pay for it.
Yeah.
And so if we actually invested in everybody having an opportunity for pre-K at 3-year-old, then we wouldn't kind of reinforce, some of these divisions in our society.
No, and even seeing the whole COVID thing happen, you see the divisions, because we have those privileges, right? We have a lot of privileges, like us being at home.
We got jobs.
Yeah. Healthcare.
Yeah, exactly. So, I want to live in a world where, that should be something that everybody has, right?
Yeah.
And not just folks like us who, by hard work, but a lot of luck too, are in the spaces that we're in.
Yeah, well, it's a lot of luck and a lot of like, there's other people that did stuff before us, whether it was parents, whether it was like, in one of the articles I read that you had right now, you said, the person that gave me the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th chance, like, there's a lot of them, and
Yeah, no, I think I wrote a blog post one time about like, it was something I think I said I was more than my suspension, right? Like I got suspended a couple of times from high school, and I was on every path to be one of those students that was pushed out or kicked out. I didn't want to be there, but folks believed in me and gave me chances. So, why me and not other people?
Yeah. It's the opposite of zero tolerance, right? It's it's the total opposite. That's the I'm gonna give you a chance.
Yeah, And I mean, there's limits to that, you know, but you know how it is, right? As good educators, we build relationships with students, and we know which ones need that, you know, like more strict structure, and those ones that need that space and that care and that love.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even especially with kids, man, especially with kids, you know, you bring out, you could roll out everything, roll it all out. That's, if any time, that's the best time to give as many chances as possible. I had, I did my, I did my credential through Fresno Pacific, and, you know, it's a Christian school.
Ah, yeah. Sunbird, right? The Sunbirds?
Yeah, the Sunbirds. And I had, I did it through the extension center over here in Bakersfield. And I had, I remember in the class, somebody said, you know, yeah, well, if they're messing around too much and this and that and this, you know, you got to get them out. And then I was like, hey, man, I thought this was a Christian school. This is Jesus days. Like, we, Jesus wouldn't say get them out. We're like,
yeah, you seen the people that Jesus was hanging around with, you know, like
not reputable.
Yeah, he was not chilling with, you know, the Donald Trumps of the world, you know.
Yeah, there you go, man. There's plenty of parables for that one.
Sorry, I'm gonna get you in trouble. I apologize.
No, you're good, man. I'm the one that started it. I said, you know, I said the whole rapists and criminals part. You know, that part for me was the hardest part right there. I didn't, you know, I don't want to say that was the end, but nothing from there has demonstrated to me that that's not what he meant.
Yeah, I mean, just like a exactly, and just like a personal story from that, you know, like, you know, mi abuela, she, you know, she's 81, right, and her and my grandpa, you know, did everything right, you know, like, you know, the whole immigrant narrative of you work hard, you keep your head down, you know, you raise your kids, X, Y, and Z, you know, and for her whole life, she has felt like the United States was a place that was hers, you know, and I never ever heard her say anything political, really, you know, in my life. But she called me, you know, the day after the election, and she just, you know, she said, like, I never heard her say raza before in my whole life, you know, but she said it started with us, like, you know, he came after us, right? This whole idea was based on, you know, our gente, was based on our community. And like, you know, for my grandmother, you know, she would go to church as an 80-year-old woman who loves the United States and be told by people in her own church, like, why are you here? And she said, you know, this never happened before. This never happened before. Yeah. You know, breaks your heart, to be honest.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, because my grandparents came, like my grandparents, my dads, they came you know, the right way, all that. But my moms, they came from El Salvador, and they came what some people would like to call the wrong way. And so I didn't have it hard. I was born here. I was born in Anaheim, but my mom, she had it hard, and they came, you know, they came without papers and everything. So like it wasn't until all this stuff started, especially over the last few years, that now I'm like, yeah, man, my mom came without papers. Like I feel like I got to say with pride, like, hey, no, like, you want to know what someone without papers and struggle, because my grandma, my grandma had bless her heart, man, she passed away this summer, but she had a lot of demons, you know. She had like 11 kids. She struggled, you know. So when people say that bad parent, like, they were talking about my grandma, and you know what I mean?
Yeah.
My grandma, she took care of her daughters. She did everything she could for them. Now all her grandkids are doing, you know, she's got grandkids that were in law enforcement, teachers. I got a cousin that is working at Amazon, bro. And it's like, but that's what an undocumented immigrant is. It's someone that gives everything up, knowing that their life is probably going to be miserable as a shadow citizen or not a citizen. Yeah. And then ideally 2 generations down the line, like, someone else is gonna, you know what I mean?
Yeah. So yeah, I read a lot about machismo, right? To like these ways of like just grinding it out, right? And the beauty that comes from making do, you know? Yeah. And what you're talking about right now, and what we're talking about, I want these spaces in classrooms, right? Where students can look back at their family knowledges and lives and say, hey, you know what? This is something to be proud of, but there's also like, there's knowledge here, right? Yeah. Like there are ways of being in the world that should be lifted up and critiqued. right? But you know, I want our classrooms to be spaces like this, you know, like we're sharing.
Hey, bro, you're gonna love it there in Bakersfield. Then you're gonna love it. No, I'm serious. I mean, I know you're gonna love it. But just recently, you know, you get to talk to Dr. Sandals too.
Yeah, so he's in my we're colleagues. So
Yeah, yeah, man. One of the classes, talk to him too though. But one of the because he's got a lot. Like he's been he's been on here too. I've had him on the podcast.
I'm gonna have to listen to that because one of the things I'm most bummed about, you know, is like, you know, he's like, we're gonna go out and hang out and eat Thai food as soon as all this stuff blows over. You know? So
yeah, no, he's cool, man. But in that one of the classes that he teaches, and I got to teach it once, I think it was the social justice class, but everybody there writes, a lot of people write about their family background, and it's the Valley, bro. It's different. It's a different family background than if you're in LA. LA is a different background, you know, and there's nothing wrong with that. But the Valley, like a lot of people talking about the fields, a lot of people talking about, you know, first generation, a lot like it's, yeah, man, I know what you're talking about. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah.
And I mean, you know, I worked in the fields, you know, like that was my first jobs were freaking packing fruit for hours and hours, you know, like that.
What were you in, dude? La cherry?
No, kiwis, believe it or not, kiwis. Yeah. So, and then I graduated and I had to work in the fields with the tomates, and oh man, that's the worst.
Yeah.
It's
harsh.
It's hard. And those folks, I mean, those are essential workers without a doubt. And we should hold them up as heroes.
You know what you want to check out too, man? They have through the Chavez Center, they have the Field Institute of Educational Leadership Development. And they have a school completion in it, and it's to help people working in the fields come back, finish their high school degree, but then also to start like their own businesses and like cooperatives and stuff. And that's all headquartered here in Kern County. Yeah, I think you'd have a good time talking to those people.
Yeah, that'd be great. And I mean, you know how it is, man. Our students at CSUB are just amazing, and what they're, like you said, what they're coming to us with, what they're doing, their resiliency. So you know, I'm blessed to be here.
Yeah, cool, man. So yeah, no, I appreciate you taking the time. Yeah, this is awesome. So so if Dr. Sandals has got the Thai food, I'm gonna take you out to something else. I don't know, what do I like here? Something I'm gonna get you. I think I'm gonna take you to Thai food too.
I was gonna say, you gotta show me, you know, the best pupusas around here or something, you know.
No, like, man, my mom makes them.
That's even better. Yeah, that's even better.
Yeah, no, thanks, Tim. I appreciate it, man. And no, this is cool, dude. I really appreciate it. So have a good week. Stay safe, and then I'll see you on campus when everything opens up. All right.
Hey, amen. Take it easy, and thanks so much. And I look forward to continuing to learn and work with you.
All right, let me pause.